Hey everyone, welcome to Seeds of Wisdom. It's Friday. I'm calling this My Story Friday. So I'm going to be releasing a couple episodes of my educational content during the week on Monday to Thursday. On Fridays, I'm going to tie that into something going on now or something personal in life and my clinical practice. So, if you haven't been here before, I'm Susan. I'm a psychiatric nurse with 25 years of mental health experience, and I'm the mom of two Gen Z kids. They're in their 20s, but they're my kids. So this week, we put out episode 2 and episode 3. Episode 3 was about why Think Positive doesn't work. The whole nervous system piece of what makes us human. We have a mind, body, spirit. The body's run by the nervous system. And the nervous system is complex. There's 3 different parts to it, and polyvagal theory lays that out. So it felt like this is the right week to talk about what I'm going to talk about today in light of polyvagal theory. Because I want to talk to you about something that connects directly to that content that's been going on for a while and is going on now. If you haven't watched episode 3 yet, any of the temperament versions, you could do that first or after, but just know it's a foundation for what I'm about to say today in this video. So let's get to it. Last night, I watched Heather Cox Richardson on YouTube. She also does a Substack. If you don't know her, she's a historian, a professor, and she's been documenting the historical patterns behind American politics for years now. She's absolutely brilliant. She really cares. So she puts a lot, her heart and soul into her work. I'll link her below so you could check her out. She's a source of inspiration for me too. And she's one of the few sources that I actually trust to give me context about what's going on right now without just fueling my fear or contributing just to outrage. She tries to look at history and give us some hope there might be a way out of this. And I want to be honest about something. I've had to build myself a political information diet recently. I limit myself to her 2 weekly live sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then she has a Saturday morning discussion with her friend Joanne, who's also a historian who specializes in revolutionary history. But that's it. Right now, that's my regulated dose. Because I was watching too much before, and that made me panic or freeze up. I was doom scrolling. I was losing sleep about it. And as a psych nurse, I recognized what was happening to my own nervous system. So I had to intervene on my own behalf with myself. My self-care isn't just checking out, though. Self-care is building the capacity to stay in the resistance here. So last night, she said something that got to me. And a lot has gotten to me lately, maybe for the last decade or since the 80s even. I don't know. But I realize she does history. That's her lane. She's got a doctorate, advanced degrees. She's an expert. She has, the whole process to back up what her assertions are. But my lane is pattern recognition. That's my specialty. I'm a way pathfinder personality type. So I look at everything and try and find the path forward. And clinical pattern recognition, I've got years of experience, 25 years. And doing med management with therapy, I sat with thousands of patients over my career. And I sat with people who were figuring out something was wrong during the process. It might be narcissistic abuse, coercive control. I sat with them during that. I helped them through it. And then if they got out, I helped them in the aftermath. I had this all going on in my own life and didn't know it. So I can tell you I know the patterns I'm talking about very, very well. And let me teach you something. So first, narcissistic abuse. I need to name this because it's the engine underneath everything I'm about to describe. Narcissistic abuse is a pattern of coercive control where one person, or people in a system, maintain power through manipulation, destabilization, and the systemic erosion of other people's reality. It's not just someone being selfish, and it's not just a bad personality. if you look at what's behind narcissistic personality disorder, it's actually the person has so much shame inside them that they're actually bad. They build an armor about them, and the armor says there is nothing ever wrong with me. And to keep that armor up and to like prevent people from attacking it, they want to control and dominate everyone around them. And this really comes from like a core wound when we look way back in humanity. Anybody with antisocial behaviors that was doing things that weren't in the tribe's best interest. They were narcissistic and attacking others and doing antisocial things. They were left out in the wilderness to die. So modern day people with narcissistic personality disorder have a core shame and absolute terror of being rejected. So again, narcissism, malignant narcissism, narcissistic PD, this isn't just being selfish. People can have narcissistic traits. But if we look at the pathology, it has specific recognizable patterns. There are tools they use to maintain control. I've seen it in families, a parent who controls through guilt, silence, rage at the kids, and they'll rewrite the past. So the kids grow up not trusting their own perceptions. They don't know what's real, what their childhood was really like. They might put the parent on a pedestal where the parent insists they be. That's by design. And I've seen it in marriages. There's one spouse who will isolate, love bomb, devalue, and discard the other. And then rewrite the story so that they're actually the victim. And the spouse was the abuser. Like every time. I've seen it in workplaces. There's a boss who takes credit, who shifts blame, who punishes anyone who speaks up. And somehow they always end up looking like the hero while the team is falling apart. And when things do fall apart, which they eventually do, then they're the victim and the team was the problem. I've seen it in churches. The church leadership that demands loyalty of the congregation, silences dissent, shames any questioning, and frames accountability as an attack on the institution or the church itself. And here's what my clinical training taught me. The pattern is fractal. I believe we're in a holographic fractal universe where the whole is in the part and the part is in the whole. So this is fractal, and it works the same way at every scale. The narcissistic family system and the narcissistic government use the same playbook, the same exact tools. They use the same cycles. It's only the scale that changes. The whole entire mechanism does not. One of those tools that the narcissists use has a name. It is DARVO, D-A-R-V-O, coined by psychologist Jennifer Fried in 1997. It stands for deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Here's how it works in a relationship, the version I've seen hundreds of times and lived through myself. So, in my office, someone comes to me and they say, my partner hurt me. So we might have a session where the partner comes in and we talk about it. So when the partner is confronted about what they did, first, they deny. They say, it never happened. She's making it up. You're exaggerating, he says to her. And that's gaslighting. Making someone doubt what they saw, what they felt, what they know actually happened. And then, if the spouse keeps giving more evidence, which is too strong to deny, the offender or the perpetrator will attack. They go after the person who raised the alarm. They'll say, she's crazy, she's lying, she has an agenda, she's trying to destroy me. They never address the original point, which was what they did to harm the other person. Instead, they attack that person who named it, and they distract everyone from what happened, and we're all fighting about who's to blame. And then the masterstroke, they reverse it and say, actually, I'm the victim here. I'm the one being abused. I'm the one being persecuted. The person with all the power claims victimhood. the person with the least power gets reframed as the threat. Fried's research found that 72% of perpetrators use all three steps together when they're confronted with what they actually did to hurt someone. So this isn't rare. This is a default playbook. I used to call it the Narcissistic Playbook. And it shows up at every level of narcissistic abuse. And the narcissistic family, the parent denies the abuse happened. Then they'll attack the child, and they'll call the child like ungrateful or too sensitive. And then reverse, and they'll say to the child, after everything I've done for you, how dare you hurt me here? And then in the narcissistic marriage, the abuser denies the cruelty, attacks the spouse's sanity or credibility, and then reverses it. You're the abusive one. I'm the victim of your anger. In the narcissistic workplace, leadership denies the toxic culture, attacks the whistleblower's competence or motives, and then reverses. This person is the problem. We're just trying to run a business. In the narcissistic church, leadership denies the harm, attacks the person who spoke up, calls them divisive or lacking faith, and then reverses and said, you're attacking God's house. We're the ones being persecuted. In a narcissistic government, they deny that laws exist now or ever existed. They deny that institutions have or ever had authority to do what they've always done. They deny that norms were real. They act as if things weren't one way for years and are different now. They deny that the rule of law was ever an agreement. They attack the people who document reality. They're threatening to them. The journalists, the scientists, the judges, the inspectors, the watchdogs, anyone who criticizes what's going on. And then they'll reverse it. The most powerful people in the room claim persecution, while the most vulnerable people get framed as a threat, and then persecuted with the power that the political system has. All while crying, poor me. I'm such a victim. They hurt me. There's another piece I want to name, part of the deny phase, especially at the institutional level. It isn't just denying what happened yesterday. It's denying that the rules ever existed in the first place. They totally rewrite history. They'll go to all efforts to rewrite history. Think about that. In an abusive relationship, the abuser doesn't just deny hitting you or harming you. They deny that don't hit people was ever bad or was ever an agreement. They said, I never said that. That's not what we agreed to. You're remembering it wrong. And at a bigger scale, that looks like denying that laws exist now or ever existed, that institutions have or ever had authority, that norms were ever real, that the Constitution meant what it said, or they confuse it all up and say it says something completely different. If you can convince people that the structure never existed, you don't have to explain why you're breaking it. You just say, there was nothing to break. And then there's rules for thee and not for me. The narcissist holds you to standards they exempt themselves from, like loyalty, honesty, transparency, accountability. They demand it of everyone else. But they never practice it themselves, ever. They have the power. They don't need to. And that's not just simply hypocrisy. That's a feature of narcissistic abuse. The double standard is the dominance display at every scale. So why does this work? Why do smart, capable people fall for it? Because DARVO, and narcissistic abuse in general, it doesn't target your logic in your mind. It targets your nervous system. This is the episode 3 connection. This is why we just spent a whole episode on polyvagal theory. Next week we're going to talk about how to calm the nervous system and connect with other people, but we'll get to that. Right now we're looking at framework. And gaslighting, the deny phase. That activates your dorsal vagal system. That's a shutdown state. It's like too much stress. There's confusion, fog. And in just domestic violence, FOG is an acronym, FOG, for fear, obligation, and guilt. So the victim thinks, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe it's not that bad. And they might shut down. And that's not you being weak, that's your nervous system going into freeze because reality is being destabilized and your body doesn't know how to orient. And then, to keep you even more off kilter, the attack phase activates the sympathetic arousal, like fear. It might be anger. So it's fight or flight, anger or fear. They want you to be afraid. But when the attacker has more power than you, and you can't fight them and you can't leave, what happens? You're freezing, and you might fawn. Fawning, you comply, you appease them, you try and get the attack to stop. You go along to get along. And it's not because you agree, you're quite confused. Because your nervous system says this is the safest option right now. Your nervous system makes a call without your brain and mind getting a vote. It's under the surface, under the radar. So then they go to the reverse part, when suddenly you're the problem. And that activates the shame, the whole shame machine. Deep body level shame. Now, your nervous system isn't just confused. Now it's going to turn everything against you. You're not just frozen, you're not just fawning. You're frozen and you think you deserve to be in this kind of trouble. So this can happen in a marriage. It happens in a family where the kids can't leave. It happens in a church where the whole community is wrapped up in the institution. It happens in the workplace where you just need the paycheck and you have a whole life and it's not easy to leave. And it happens in a country where the systems you trusted to protect you are the systems now running this whole playbook. So this is not a willpower problem. There's not something fundamentally wrong with you because you're responding the way you are. This is biology. Your nervous system was designed to handle predators, storms, things in the environment, bears and lions and bad things happening. So it was not designed for sustained psychological manipulation. And abusers have something called cold empathy. They don't really feel or have empathy for you, but they watch what happens to you when they use the playbook. And when narcissistic abuse operates at the national scale, through media, through institutions, through constant destabilization, your nervous system responds the same way it would in an abusive home. Confusion, freeze, fawn, compliance, checking out, doom scrolling, to be afraid of something else. Oh. So that's why I had to build my information diet. Not because I don't care, I care very deeply. Because I recognize my own freeze response and my flight response and panic. And I'd rather show up regulated twice a week to take in information, and maybe on Saturday, than shut down completely or roll up in a ball or panic. I'd rather have some energy to do this work. And I've got some social support too. So next week we'll talk about how to take care of your body and co-regulation. So there's a lot that gives me hope though. I laid this out, but a lot of people have figured it out and gotten out of these bad situations. So Fried's research found something remarkable. When people are educated about DARVO, when they learn what it is and how it works, it significantly loses its power. So people who understand the tactics were less likely to blame the victim, themselves or others. They were more likely to see through the manipulation, and they were more likely to hold the perpetrator accountable. So education is literally the antidote to this whole thing. Naming the pattern breaks its power, and it's not completely, it's not instantly, but meaningfully now, and it's a start. And this is true at every scale. The child who finally learns, like, oh, that's what my parent was doing to me. It's not my fault. Something shifts in them. The spouse who hears the word gaslighting for the first time and goes, oh, that's what's been happening to me. Something breaks open in them. The employee who recognizes the pattern in their boss. the congregation member who sees it in the pastor or church leadership, the citizen who sees it in their government. The pattern is the pattern, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it, like taking the red pill in the Matrix. So Mr. Rogers said something that I keep coming back to. He said, and I loved him when I was a kid, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. DARVO works in the dark. Narcissistic abuse works in the dark. It depends on silence. It depends on shame. It depends on you not having the language to name what's happening to you. But if your eyes open, if it's mentionable, if you can name it, it becomes more manageable. Doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's painless, but it becomes manageable. You go from, I think I'm going crazy, to, oh, I see the pattern. And that changes everything. So that's why I built this channel. That's why Seeds of Wisdom exists. I'm not here to tell you what to think politically. I am not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm here to give you the language and the pattern recognition so you can see it for yourself in your relationships, in your family, in your workplace, in your town, city, country, in your own self-talk, in your own head. Because sometimes we run DARVO on ourselves. We'll say, I'm fine, stop being dramatic, I'm the problem here. Sound familiar? So what do? We build the psychological resistance. That's what this channel is for. Understand your nervous system so you can manage it instead of it managing you. Again, we'll go into that next week. So we talked about why this is in episode 3. So understand narcissistic abuse and coercive control patterns so you can recognize them at any scale. That's what I'm teaching you right now. Understand your own personality structure, and we'll get to that later in more detail, and then you'll know where you're vulnerable and where you're strong. That's the whole Seeds of Wisdom project. And it's going to be a long arc because doing this is not a sprint, it's more a marathon, and becoming aware of yourself, who you are, and finding meaning goes throughout your life. We're getting a start here, though. The people who use the tactics of DARVO, coercive control, narcissistic abuse, if they use them in families, in marriages, in workplaces, in churches, in governments, in any area, they depend on your confusion. You freeze. You're compliant. You're silent. And every person who learns to recognize the pattern is one less person it works on. Heather Cox Richardson says women, older white women who've been around long enough to have seen some of these things, actually have the power to stand and use our voice. We've got some protections. We've got some perspective. And we've got something to say. I'm old enough. I've seen some things. I've seen them at the bedside in the hospital, in my office, any setting, and I'm seeing them now. And I'm not going to be quiet about it. I'm not just doing this for my kids, though I am doing it for them. I'm doing it for every person watching this who has felt confused, frozen, gaslit, or silenced. Whether that was in a relationship, in a family, in a church, in your neighborhood, at work, or something much bigger like a government. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. So let's keep mentioning it. Talk to each other about this. And take care of your nervous system. Build your information diet. Learn these patterns. Use your voice. I'm Susan. This is My Story Friday. I'll see you next week.